Hey there, so in this video we're basically going to be looking at a lot of different angle vocabulary, and we're going to start with a bunch of stuff that you already know, and we're just going to get comfortable with how to communicate with degrees and angles and things like that in a new algebraic language. So acute angles, you guys already know the deal. You guys know that acute angles are smaller than 90, so we put that the measure of the angle has to be less than 90. I try to make it kind of look like a more cursive-y type M. You're going to see that a lot. You're not really going to see something like M. You're definitely going to see it more like the measure of an angle, okay? I know that sounds silly, but it's true. It definitely looks more like that kind of in the Times New Roman font when you're going to see it online and in textbooks, okay? All right, so the acute angle is less than 90 degrees. So for example, it could be like 20 or maybe a little bit larger than that at 42 degrees. Now, the obtuse ones, you guys know, are bigger than 90, but less than 180. They're those kind of fat angles. So it's got to be in between 90 and 180. Notice it can't equal 90, so I'm not putting the or equal to, and it can't equal 180. I'm not putting the or equal to symbol, okay? It's just the less than. So 90 is smaller than the, our obtuse angle, meaning the obtuse angle is bigger than 90, but that obtuse angle is also smaller than the 80. It's going to be in between them, all right? So, for example, like 165 degrees. Now the right angle, you guys know a right angle is exactly 90 degrees, and you'll usually see that kind of little box looking thing in the angle to indicate that you've got a right angle. Now this one you might not know, you might know, I'm not sure, but a straight angle, just a straight line, is 180 degrees. And an easy way to remember that is like if I've got this straight line, imagine that I'm saying it's two right angles put together. So if I've got this 90 degrees in red plus this 90 degrees in blue, what I'm saying here is that that whole thing is going to measure 180 degrees. All right, now let me just open up a new page here real quick to just talk about a circle. Now you guys know that a circle is 360 degrees, and now I'm just going to put a red line in here from the center. And I'm going to copy and paste that red line so that I can now move it and show you guys some angles. So there I've made a 90-degree angle. From here to here is 90 degrees. Now if I go from here with this 90 all the way over, 90 plus 90 was the 180. All right, back to the beginning. 90, 90, and 90 again. That whole guy would be a 270-degree angle. And then if I went 90 more degrees, I'd make a full circle and be 360 degrees. So we've got 90, 180, 270, and now I'm going to stop at 270 and show you. This blue angle is the one that's 270, and then in here in green, you'd have another 90-degree angle. And so the 270 out here in blue plus the 90, that right there would equal the 360 total for the circle, okay? All right, now you guys already know that vocabulary, and we're going to talk a lot about the relationship between a bunch of these angle types, okay? Now the first thing I want to start you guys off with is that relationships can either be complementary or supplementary depending on their sum, okay? So if I take two angles, if I've got two angles, they could be complementary or they could be supplementary. It just depends on their sum. Here's what I mean. First, I'm going to start with complementary angles. Complementary angles add up to 90 degrees. So if I am talking about, let me actually use a straight line tool so that works out a little bit better. And I'm actually going to change the color to blue so you see what I'm talking about. I have a 90-degree angle right there with the blue lines. Now if I split that with the red line, this measures 52 degrees and this one's 38 degrees. So if I add them together, they equal 90. So if I give you 52 degrees, if I give you that something is 52 degrees, and I ask you what is its complement, all I'm literally asking is what number plus the 52 equals 90. And our answer in this case, the complement to 52, would be this 38 degrees. So now I want you to try. If I'm telling you that there's an angle out there that measures 42 degrees, what would be the measure of its complement? Now I want you to try and get an answer there, and then after everybody's had a chance to watch the videos, we're going to come through and talk about the answers to some of these you try problems, okay? So if at any point you need to pause to try any of these problems, go for it, you can pause, but I'm sure in the time that I've been talking, you've already figured out that answer. All right, so we've taken care of complementary. Complementary adds up to 90. And now we're going to talk about supplementary. Now, supplementary, same idea. They just add up to 180, which basically means, folks, we're talking about things that might make straight lines. So, for example, if I'm talking about this blue straight line, it has been formed by this 52-degree angle that is right next to this 128-degree angle. So these two angles add up to make this straight line, okay? What I'm talking about with the angles adding up is I'm saying if I take this 52-degree angle and add it to this 128-degree angle, I can essentially ignore those and realize I have now created a straight line. All right? So now let me give you another problem. If an angle measures 42 degrees, what would be the measure of its supplement? Remember, a supplement degree would add up to 180. Now, moving forward in the unit, it's going to be very, very tough for you to remember which one is which, complementary versus supplementary. And even though the spelling's a little bit different, it is, when you give somebody a compliment, it's spelled with an I, and we're talking about compliments with an E. But in any case, I think you guys would agree that, like, if you think somebody is wearing a nice outfit, or that their haircut looks nice, or that they were really, really helpful to somebody else, I think we can all agree that if somebody's doing something nice, or if you really like something about somebody, it's really nice to compliment them, okay? It is the right thing to do to tell people good things. It is right to compliment people. That'll help you remember that it is right. Okay, right angles are 90 degrees, so complementary angles add up to 90 because it's the right thing to compliment people. All right, that's just a quick little trick to help you remember that complementary adds up to 90, and then you can just remember that supplementary is the other one. Okay? All right, cool. Now, this one's going to require some of your algebra that you've already learned when solving some equations, okay? All right. We want to be able to, in this situation, we're going to find the measure of angle Z, and we're going to find the measure of angle Y, okay? We're going to find the measure of angle Z, and we're going to find the measure of angle Y. I have fixed it for you guys so that there is no typo to worry about. Okay. We are going to be finding the measure of angle Z and the measure of angle Y, which we can do using our algebra here. All right. Now these red angles, you tell me, are these red angles adding up to a right angle, or are they adding up to a straight line? All right. I think you guys could all agree that they're making this straight line. So this 2x plus 13 adds to this right here to equal 180 degrees. Okay, that means that they're supplementary, and we can set up an equation that says the 2x plus the 13, that angle, now added with the other angle of 8x minus the 43, they're going to add up to 180 degrees. Now, we know how to combine like terms, and we know how to solve for x, and the idea is that if we do this, we'll now know what x equals. No, I'm not going to tell you what x equals, but if you solve this equation to find x, you can plug it in here, and you can plug it in here, which means you can then tell me the total number of degrees that this angle is, and you can tell me the total number of degrees that this angle is. Once you know what this angle right here measures, you can use the fact that it makes this right angle to just take it and subtract it from 90, and you'll have found y. Okay? So let me just back up to explain that one more time. Your goal first is to catch that this angle and this angle make this red straight line, so we can add them up, and it'll equal 180. When we do that, we'll have solved for x, which means we now have a value to plug in here and double it and add 13. We'll have a value for x to plug in and multiply by 8 and then subtract the 43. At that point, what we'll have, let me now erase everything. At that point, what we'll have is we'll know what this angle measures, and we'll know what this angle measures. Now, if you have the green angle, you can find y. because they're complementary and should add up to 90. If you find this blue angle, you can find Z, because the blue angle over here with this angle form this straight line, meaning that they're supplementary and should add up to 180. So you might need to pause the video to give this problem some thought, but your goal is to solve the equation for x and plug it in. Then once you have these angles, use the definition of complementary to add up to 90 to find y, and then you're going to use the definition of supplementary to add up to 180 to find z. Remember, we are going to be going over these as a class once everybody's had a chance to watch the video, but I really want you to try right now on your own to find the measure of angle y and the measure of angle z before you move on to any other angle vocabulary, okay? Now if you flip over to page 2, we've got a lot more vocab that we're going to fill in here. First thing is called a transversal. Think about the Transcontinental Railroad. Why is the Transcontinental Railroad called the Transcontinental Railroad? Well, it's because it cuts across the United States. A transversal here is this red line, and it's something that's going to cut across 2 or more lines. Now, our lines in this case that it crosses over are lines Q and lines R, and so those lines are parallel, and line P is the transversal that's cutting across them. What the transversal does is it creates a bunch of these angles, and now we're going to define these angle types. First, I want to remind you guys that if you hear me saying the word congruent, that literally means the same. Congruent means equal. So all right angles are congruent to each other because they all equal 90 degrees. Now, this is the tough part. This part's going to be a little bit tricky, okay? You guys might have a hard time discovering the difference between adjacent and vertical angles. So I'm going to try to be very clear about the difference between adjacent and vertical, and it has everything to do with their location at an intersection, okay? It has everything to do with their location at an intersection. Now, in the picture up here, I've got it color-coded so that you can kind of see the blue angles going together versus the yellow ones, all right? First, I'm going to talk about adjacent. Adjacent literally means right next to each other, okay? So in my picture up here, angle H is adjacent to angle I. H is next to I. It is also, angle H is next to angle K. So if I ask you guys, what are the angles that are adjacent to angle H? You're going to tell me it's angle I and angle K. Now if I ask for which one is vertical, now you're going to be making the bow tie with me, okay? If I ask which one is vertical with angle H, that angle, I want to know for vertical, it's going to be this angle right here, angle J. Now what I mean by a bow tie is, now I'm just going to put my pen back. It kind of makes a bow tie for vertical if I'm like, all right, the measure of angle H and the measure of angle J, right there, it just kind of looks a little bit like a bow tie, okay? So in this picture, let's just look real quickly. So like X and 76 are next to each other. Those would be adjacent. X is also adjacent to Y because they're right next to each other. But X makes a bow tie with Z. You see kind of the bow tie that's in there, y'all? If it makes kind of that bow tie, that's how you know it's vertical. So the vertical angles kind of make the bow tie looking thing, and adjacent ones are right next to each other. Adjacent means that they're going to share a ray. So angle X and angle 76 here share that green ray. I'd have to trace that green side if I was tracing angle X, and I'd have to trace it again if I was tracing angle 76. That means that they're adjacent, okay? All right, so now for the you try questions. What do you notice about angle X compared to angle Z? Angle X and angle Z are going to be the same as each other. They're both that same obtuse angle, kind of like up here. These two would be the same. Angle I and angle K are congruent. They're both acute, and they're congruent. Vertical angles are congruent. Vertical angles are congruent. I've said it again. Vertical angles are congruent. All right? Vertical angles are congruent. And friendly reminder that the X and the 76 here, since they're adjacent, they're going to add up to 180. So now you can tell me the measure of angle X. Once you know the measure of angle X, you can tell me Y and you can tell me Z. So I'm going to give you a chance to try. And again, just keep moving on in the video. We're going to go over all the green you try questions after the video is done. So we've got adjacent for next to each other and vertical for across from each other, sharing that vertical is across from each other diagonally. Next to each other, they share the common ray for adjacent. Now, corresponding angles are another type of angle that you guys are going to be learning about. And in this picture, angles 1 and angle 5 are corresponding. What corresponding means is that they're in the same place, they're at the same spot, just at a different intersection, okay? So angle 1 is up here, kind of in the top right corner at this intersection. Angle 5 is the one in that exact same spot in this intersection, all right? So I've told you that angle 1 and 5 are corresponding, and now I want you to try to tell me what angle corresponds to angle 2, which one corresponds to angle 3, and which one corresponds to angle 4, okay? All right, now alternate interior versus alternate exterior are the last two types of angles that we're going to be defining in this video. Now, interior means inside, exterior is outside. So we want to find where are the angles in relation to the parallel lines. Now over here, I want to remind you guys by highlighting them that this and this are the parallel lines, and the yellow line there is the transversal. So what the transversal does is it creates these angles, and angle A, B, C, and D are all inside the parallel lines. In pink, I'm going to put a dot for all the angles that are exterior. Those would be exterior angles, okay? So now we're going to focus on just the A, B, C, and D. Alternate means that they're going to be on alternating sides of the transversal. A and D, folks, are going to be the exact same angle measure. So if I tell you that angle A is 30 degrees, you can tell me angle D is also 30 degrees. If A is 30, B has to be 150 because it's making a straight line. If B is 150, C is also 150. So alternate interior angles have the same measure as each other. And if we know A, we can find B. And if we know A, we also know D. All right. Now, if they're outside of the angles, outside of the parallel lines, they're going to be alternate exterior angles. Now, in this picture, once again, I'll highlight for you guys the parallel lines. There's the parallel lines this time. And we have this yellow transversal. So now we're focusing on the exterior angles, which I'll put in that pink dot again. We're focusing out here, 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 and here. Earlier up top, we focused on the interior, and we're going to ignore that for right now. Now, outside of the parallel lines, we have the 45, the B, G, and H. Which one alternates around the transversal and is also outside of the parallel lines from B? It's going to be G. B and G alternate around the transversal outside the parallel lines. So we know H and 45 go together. And now watch what I can show you guys is the whole point of knowing what all these angles are called and how they work. If we know that this guy is 45 degrees, I can say that angle B here is 180 minus the 45. So angle B has to be 135 degrees because B and 45 make that straight line. Angle B and the 45 make a 180 degrees. Now I can also say that since D is vertical, it makes that little bow tie with it, this has to be 45. And that checks out with B still being 135 because those two angles together in green, B and D, make that straight line. So 35 and 45 checks out to be supplementary here. 35 and 45 were supplementary here. Now if we know B is 135, we can go with vertical, that C also has to be 135. It checks out that C and D add up to 180 to make that straight line that I just drew in blue. So you can prove what the angle is more than one way. You just want to know all of the vocabulary terms so you can justify what it is that you're trying to prove. Now I'm going to use the alternate interior and exterior stuff. We mentioned earlier that B and G are alternate exterior. So if this is 135, this has to be 135 as well. Now I can also prove it by going from C to F because of alternate interior. C and F are alternate interior, which means F has to be 135. And 135 is vertical to this 135, that little bow tie, so they're the same. Now I know if D was 45, because it's alternate interior with E, I can say that E is 45 degrees. And vertical over here with H has to be 45 degrees as well. It also checks out here with supplementary that the 45 and the 35 add up to make that purple straight line. And it checks out that 45 and 35 add up to make that 180 degree straight line. So we're trying to learn the vocabulary terms on this page so that when we're trying to find the missing angle measures, we can have that conversation and prove why certain things are what they are. And that takes care of the vocabulary video that I wanted you guys to watch right now for pages 1 and 2 of your packet. Thank you.